What's up, my friends? Sunday morning is here. We made it. It's NFL Week 2. If you are here bright and early with me, East Coast fathers, East Coast single men, single women, doesn't matter to me. If you're a West Coaster right now and you are here with me, I appreciate you very much. East Coasters, I expect you to be here. Yeah, you're not getting like bonus points for being here. It's after 9 o'clock. Those West Coasters, though, they're getting up at 6 a.m., pounding coffee, so they can tune in and listen to some DFS show. Jokes aside, my friends, I am humbled if you have chosen to watch the Donuts Sunday morning show. And listen, this bad boy is going to be about 3 hours. We hit 2 hours and 45 minutes last week. There was, I had a partner in crime with me for 2.5 hours, and I had somebody come on and guest at 10:30. Today's mostly solo show. People will be likely popping in and out as we go, and as we continue to kind of find our footing as a show for Sunday mornings, my friends. So I have so many different things I want to do today, and I'm kind of going to read off my notes here so I can just identify exactly all the different things we're going to be doing, because it's a lot. We got a lot to do. So we're going to start off by looking at some of the Study Hub stuff. I want to show you a few tricks of the trade. So last week, using Lineup Rewind on Fantasy Country, which we will spend some time on this morning, CG and I had kind of uncovered something. Actually, CG sent me this idea of using the Study Hub filters to sort out above average at different categories, and it returned like $15,000 in like the $5 contest that I had entered, the Louisiana give back donation one, whatever. I can't remember what the charity kickoff or whatever it was called. So really interesting concept. I didn't talk about it this past week. I wanted to save it for this morning because it's one of those concepts that I think is so easy. I really want the people to see how you can use the Study Hub and Fantasy Cruncher together to make it beautiful. Man, make those two just work together. And, you know, I honestly want our content to be in sync with what you are all doing with Fantasy Cruncher, because again, all of our members get $20 to use on FC every month, which means we have a lot of people using it. The next thing I want to talk about is the Vegas odds. I want to look at some of the games that could be potential shootouts, but not necessarily with a DFS perspective, more so how to take advantage of that in sports betting. And we're going to look at some player props. By the way, player props, I think, actually have a place in DFS. So we will be looking at a lot of player props today, which will be really unique, really different. We don't often do that. We're going to build some DraftKings lineups. We're going to talk strategy, and I will put together some DraftKings stacks. So I'll have that up on my page here so you guys can see it on screen. We will also do a little bit of a monkey knife fight segment. That'll be kind of fun, trying to mix things up for the solo show today. We'll do a FanDuel segment. That's right. So we'll be looking at some FanDuel stuff. We're going to look at all the new Fantasy Cruncher statistics updates, because I want to show you all the beautiful, edits, additions, modifications you can make to all the statistics and projections. So you all have a little bit of, a puppet master in you today when you use FC, because honestly, you go in there and you can look at those stats and you can be a puppet master and change things around and get exactly what you want out of that. We'll take a peek at the stacks tool as well. So when we are going through all of this, I wrote down Q&A at the bottom of my notes, but honestly, just ask questions when you want to. As we go, what I will do is I'll have my comment section up here, and I'll just bring up your comments on screen, and I'll answer them live while I'm with you. Make it super easy for you. I think that'll be nice. Okay, and let me throw up this banner here. Let's see here. Okay, cool. We're ready to go. Pure sex appeal this morning. I appreciate that, Creed. But that's not just this morning. That's every morning, my friend. Every single morning, my dude. Fire off your questions when you have them. Let's get to it. So Study Hub first. All right. Then we'll work our way down my list. I've got all my stuff here at the top of the screen, so I keep myself on track. All right. So CG had talked about using the Study Hub filters, and I believe there were 3 different categories where he was looking at. So what he did is he went through the all positions. Okay. And he created like a mini player pool. And during that player pool, he used them to kind of identify exactly who he should use in FC. And then he used those guys as his players. Now, I'm not going to do that fully, but I want to show you how to execute that so that when you dive into Fantasy Cruncher later, if you want to give that a shot, you can do it. All right. So I will show you, and then you guys can do this later. And again, we're going to be talking about the stat stuff today because my goodness, that is extremely important today. All right. Okay. So here we are. Study up. What he did last week when he was looking at the DraftKings ratings, he had all of the players. Let me bring this up full screen for you and get a nice view. What he did is he went to the DK ratings. And if you click this little arrow here, you can do all sorts of different filters. All right. So you can do number filters. You can customize your sort. You can filter different things if you want. But all he did is he went to number filters and he clicked he clicked above average. So now all of these ratings that show up will only be the players that were above whatever the average rating was. Okay. So that's what that is. So he clicks number filters, above average. Clicked DK projections, above average. DK value, above average. DK ownerships, above average. All right. And that just filtered out everybody. Look at our pool. Okay. That's small now. That's very small. It's like 50, maybe 45 players or so. And then what he did with these players is he highlight, copy, you toss them all into. Oh, shoot. Oh, okay, CG. All right, good to know. So he went position by position. Okay. And then what he did is he grabbed each player, you upload them into FC. What you have to do, my friends, is you give them like a number grade. And what that means here is you go to the upload data. Let me go to game filter. Okay. So you go to upload data and you would add like, this is my above average, right? So above average, you add the file or the column, and then you give every single person that you paste there a 1. That way you can just go ahead and give them, some way to sort them. And then you would sort them through here. All right. And once you sort them, you're able to identify which players. And I don't remember, CG, maybe you can tell me, my friend, did you just give each of them like a thumb up? Was that your entire player pool? Well, how did you end up doing that? And then, once the players were all identifiable, crunched out his lineups, and the dude like absolutely went ham. And it's a really unique way to do things where it's just super easy. And I like these like easy to replicate options, right? Like if you're able to replicate something easily every single week, that's the kind of thing that I want to do. It's super efficient. It makes it nice and easy to do week in and week out. You don't have to try to remember what to do. You're just using our data and you're just kind of asking it to work for you, not the other way around. So instead of going through here and doing all sorts of research on all sorts of positions, you're just simply going, hey, you know what? I like the rise or fall projections. These have been really good. Just go ahead. Who's all of the above rating players, all the above projection, above value, above ownerships. And then these players is like a little bit smaller pool. Now, he told me do it position by position. So I'll just do one. All right. So like, let's say we're looking at quarterbacks. We want above average rated quarterbacks. All right. So the average rating quarterback must have been an 80.83. So everyone here is the above group. All right. So we could do, DK projections above average. All right. So even smaller pool, above average value. And then I don't remember if he did below average for ownership, or maybe it was above average for this one. And then that would be his pool. All right. So Allen, Brady, Prescott, Herbert, Hurts. So they, are popping in the model in many different categories. Right. So then basically his lineups would have been built around these 5 quarterbacks. Just no more, no less. I know there's Sam Darnold down there, 5.2, Jameis Winston, 5K, whatever these guys were last week. Teddy Bridgewater's 4.8K. And he just didn't goof around. He said, these are the guys I want. I'm going to be targeting them because of this is where our model is telling you to go based on a myriad of different factors. And I think that's a really interesting idea because it allows you to simply say, you know what? I trust exactly what the model is telling me. And these are the quarterbacks I'm going to build around. And that means when you go into FC, you could basically, you build a group, a lineup building group for just these 5. Or if you're a hand builder, my goodness, you go in here and you've got a very small pool of players and you can kind of just pick and choose who you're going to build your lineups around. If you're doing a single entry lineup and you're looking at this, you're like, you know what? I'm going to grab, Jalen Hurts. He's the cheapest one out of the 5 when we did this. So you slide over here on DraftKings, you plug in Jalen Hurts, And, then you can go back through, my friends, and you do the same thing at the wide receiver position and figure out, oh, okay, and maybe it lands you on DeAndre Hopkins, Devonta Smith, and you realize maybe Deebo Samuel wasn't the play, but George Kittle is. And this is purely just based off of those super easy to filter and sort buttons. That's it. That's all you had to do. You filter, you sort, and you identify who the best plays are at each position. And then you start building your lineups. You build your stacks out just by doing that. That's it. You need to do no more, no less. And I really, really like that concept because holy smokes. I mean, Sunday morning can get busy. It can get real busy in a hurry. There's a lot of information flying around. And if you're trying to do it all at once, you're gonna fall behind quickly. All right. So, anyways, that was a really interesting way I wanted to show you that CG had identified, and I thought that was kind of cool and worth going over. Now, we talked about this last year, all right, and we did this for NBA. I never really had a chance to do this for NFL, and I want to do it today. There were a few things that I used to do when I was playing NBA last year that I was using the ownership button, the ownership filter, and trying to identify just different segments of players. Now, I wrote the Donuts playbook yesterday. It looks like it was pretty popular at 364 views. It's only been up for about 15, 20 hours. Okay. So, I would make sure you check this out, the Donuts playbook, and it is super helpful. And one of the things, and I can show you this because I'm logged in, so this is behind paywall here, but I can show you kind of one thing I was highlighting for people. There's a analysis video, player by player. I did all sorts of like strategy talking about how I like the pivots and stuff like that, and showed people what I do. So what I kind of want to show you real quick is, how do I get there? Okay, well, when you guys are going through the study hub, I like to simply sort by the salary for whatever site I'm looking at. All right. This gives me a nice overview of those price point pivots. And the price point pivots from week to week, they're not equal in value based on, the price range. So like a 6K price pivot might be totally valuable in week one, but in week two, it just doesn't make sense to do so because maybe the ownership is very flat in that price range. So there's other price ranges where I'm looking to pivot. So let me use this as an example. This week, we have an incredible opportunity here at the 6.3K price range. All right. So mid 6K, mid to low 6K. We have Naji Harris projected for a 20.3% ownership. My friends, when you look at a player like that, somebody who came off a really tough week one, yeah, he played 100% of the snaps. That's incredible opportunity. That's, so to speak, like a volume shooter in NBA. So we've got a guy here at 20.3% projected ownership. But if you look around him, my friends, in this 6K price range, here are all the other players. Chris Carson also a 17.2% ownership, so probably not the price point pivot. Now let's keep looking around here. We don't really have another player who has a similar rating, so that's unfortunate. There's no other players in there that have an 80. But if you look at the ownership levels and you start looking at the projected points levels, there's not many players that are too far off either. One of them that stands out to me right now is David Montgomery. My friends, check it out. You have a direct price point pivot from guys that are 20% owned, 17% owned. And then you have David Montgomery at 7.7% owned, a guy who had over 100 yards rushing, had 20 plus touches. He has all the touchdown equity on this team. They're not pulling him off the field for Damian Williams. Tariq Cohen not healthy. Montgomery is going to be on the field a ton. And in fact, if we go look at his snap count, you can see he was on the field last week 59%. And what I love about that is he didn't need to be a Naji Harris 100% snap rate to get all those touches. In fact, he had more touches than Naji Harris did. And he was on the field 41% less of the time, which means when David Montgomery's on the field, they're going to find a way to get him the ball. He had 17 touches, 21 total points. Another guy I really, really like this week is Miles Sanders. By the way, Miles Sanders, in the 4 games he has played with Jalen Hurts, my friends, he's been an RB1 3 of those 4 games. So we have a small 5-game Jalen Hurts starting sample size, and Miles Sanders played on 4 of those games. And in 3 of them, he was a top 12 scoring running back. So you have another guy in Miles Sanders who, by the way, my friends, played 66% of the snaps last week, had 19 touches. Again, I like these players that get a massive amount of touches when they're in the game. The running back snap count, slightly irrelevant in 2021. Everybody's snap count to some extent is going to be a lot lower than you'd think. There's only a few bell cow running backs like Darrell Henderson had 94%, but guess what? He only touched the ball 17 times. Again, look at all these running backs in here. 50% for Gordon, 54% for Gaskin, 59% for David Montgomery. And they all had similar touches, 17, 14, 14. So you have people out there touting, snap rates for running backs, but that's slightly irrelevant. You're looking at running backs who are touching the football when they're on the field. Nick Chubb, 53% snap rate, doesn't matter to me. We know it's a committee, but what are we looking for? Well, Nick Chubb has touchdown equity. When he's on the field, he's going to get the red zone runs, and he's going to get the ball predominantly if they're playing with a lead. So all these snap rates are not created equal. I don't want anybody to get lost in the minutia of all this data. So again, when we're looking at this, we're looking for those direct pivots. So you've got a guy in Naji Harris and a guy in Chris Carson who look chalky. These are large field tournaments, by the way, large field tournament projections. We're talking the largest ones. And then you have Miles Sanders at 2.5% projected ownership. You have David Montgomery at 7.7%. I mean, you can't ask for more opportunity. And, even going up $700 to Joe Mixon at 8.9%, 8.9% ownership for a guy who had 33 touches in week one. So again, I like this. The data is there to help you understand why, but you don't always need to know why. Oh my goodness, I like that. The data is there for people, but it's honestly there for the data junkies who love to look at it. But friends, all this data that you guys like to look at every single position, right? It's all baked into all of this. It's all baked into our ratings and our projections. You don't need to scour the data to be a good DFS player. In fact, I think to an extent there's a paralysis by analysis, that I see honestly a lot of people do. They get there and they start looking at data and they get off the right plays and hop on the wrong ones. Because guess what? A lot of the people that look amazing from week in and week out have highest ownerships. So if you're just looking at data and you're like, man, what a play, what a great play, what a great play, got to plug this in, can't not use him. You're going to end up with really chalky optimal routes to building lineups, which we all know is not really the way to play and win in DFS. So anyways, I want you to pay attention to this stuff this week. And I wanted to bring that up here. Don't get lost in the best play, optimal routes for all things DFS. And again, let's slide over to wide receiver real quick. And I'm going to filter the 1 through 4 o'clock main slate. And same thing here, my friends. If I'm sorting by the DK salary, I'm looking for price point pivots. You got Amari Cooper here at 14.9%, right? 14.9%. Fam, you have a myriad of options in here who could potentially have just as high of a ceiling as him at half the ownership. Adam Thielen, 2.6% for just $300 more. A guy who had 14 touchdowns last year. He had I think 2 touchdowns in week 1, right? He caught both of them from Kirk Cousins, 49 pass attempts. My goodness. I get it. Amari Cooper, blow up spot, huge game, game total 55 points. Looks exciting. But fam, who cares? Adam Thielen and the Vikings have a 23.75 implied team total. And your friends over there, Dallas, has a 26-point implied team total. That's fine. I actually will take the guy who has 2% ownership projection compared to the 15%, especially if you're talking a one-off, right? So, I mean, honestly, the way we have kind of been talking about these players, you're looking at guys like Miles Sanders, David Montgomery, single-digit ownership. You're off of Chris Carson. You're off of Naji Harris. And now you're looking at other small changes. And again, I've talked about this a million times in the past, right? I talk about this all the time. Your price point pivots do not need to be a really good pivoting off a really good player to some dart throw. Doesn't need to be that. You can pivot from one great play to another really, really, really good play. Might not be as safe, might not be as optimal, but you're trying to take down a tournament. You don't want to be safe and optimal. That's not the way you should be playing. Go ahead and use Amari Cooper in cash today. Because of all that data you absorbed and consumed all week from all these different personalities and people and websites that led you to using Amari Cooper because, oh my goodness, he's a can't miss pick. Use him in cash and feel comfortable. You're talking tournaments, my friends. What the heck? You're looking for the price point pivot. You're looking at a guy like Adam Thielen, who, my friends, is $300 more, 2% owned, which is a seventh of the ownership that Amari Cooper is garnering this week based on our ownership projections. And now we are building ourselves a lineup where, like, I look at this right now, and I know once I go cheap at defense, I feel pretty freaking good about how this team has started. I have a solid stack that I like. I got a little onslaught going on with Philadelphia, hopefully absorbing all the touchdowns between these three players. All right. And I've got George Kittle running it back on the other side. And when I look at the rest of these last three spots, and by the way, had we, gone with somebody different, maybe you don't want to go Hurts and Sanders. So, like, listen, we haven't even gotten to our stack section. I had just left them in there. So if we're talking specifically, we're off Chris Carson. We're off Naji Harris. We're off of Amari Cooper. And we're just making these pivots, these small pivots from one great play this week to the next very good play this week, right? That's all super subjective. There's nothing objective about saying this guy's a great play, this guy's a very good play. That is purely opinion based. There's nothing that can identify those beforehand. I'm sorry. I don't believe anybody that says you can say who's a great play and who isn't in DFS. Definitely not a very volatile sport that's wrapped up in touchdown equity, and which are the most difficult thing to project in and maybe outside of home runs in all of DFS. So, I'm looking for small price point pivots. I'm looking to build out my lineups in very unique ways where I am not using the chalky player. So let's continue. I just want to keep showing people how I'm using this stuff. Excuse me. I see you guys already chatting about some of this stuff here too. I like that. Appreciate it. All right, so let's keep going. Now, another similar spot this week, Cooper Kupp. I mean, he has 14.1% projected ownership. Let me zoom in on the screen a little bit. You guys can see better. A 14% projected ownership for Cooper Kupp. And look at all the tremendous options this week surrounding him. I mean, everywhere that are single-digit ownership and all within like $400 to $500 above and below his price tag. You've got Cooper Kupp. Yeah, he had himself a week one. He looked great, did really, really well. Had himself a real good game. 10 targets, 7 catches, 100 yards. I think he scored a touchdown, maybe 2 touchdowns. Let's take a peek at him. So in week one, Cooper Kupp, 7 catches, 100 yards, 1 touchdown. Okay, great game. Phenomenal game. But look at all the players around him who look just fine, okay? Yes, his player rating today is an 80. Again, his ownership is a 14%. His 3 times plus 7%. This is a metric we use that identifies, upside of players to get there. So to get towards the top of tournaments. Well, look at his counterpart. All right. The guy who lines up in the Y position on this team, who should absolutely feast this year too, my friends. Matt Stafford is a guy who kind of locks onto one guy each game. This guy gets peppered. He becomes the safety valve. It's often the guy with the best matchup. Listen, fam, would anybody be shocked this week to see Robert Woods at 5.7K, just $300 less in the same exact game, my friends, who, by the way, it's not like he has a terrible projection or anything. Cooper Kupp's projection, 16.88. 15.53 for Robert Woods, a 2.72 value. All right, that's phenomenal. And he's got half the ownership. His metric over here, virtually the same. So you go here, and now you're off one other guy who is looking a lot chalkier. So we're off Naji Harris at 20%. We're off Chris Carson at 17%. We're off Cooper Kupp at 14%. We're off Amari Cooper at 15%. That's 4 guys that add up to about 60% total ownership. And instead, we have a 2% owned player. We have a 5% owned player. We have a 6% owned player and a 3% owned player. Quick math, that's 17% ownership. That's about a fourth of what the ownership was of the initial 4 selections. Okay. And again, The way you are doing this is you're just trying to find ways off of the super chalky. Not even, that didn't need to be super chalky. It's like, if this guy is chalk, give me a really good play that's just not. All right. And a lot of people get wrapped up in these pivots thinking to themselves, my pivot needs to go for 40 points. Not really. That's such a misconception of how to use pivots in GPPs. Honestly, you just need your pivot to outscore the chalkier option by like a point. As soon as that happens, here's how it works. Let's pretend the number 100 is the amount of people in the tournament. Whatever. It's an easy number. 15% of the field has Cooper Kupp. That means 15 lineups have Cooper Kupp, and he scores 10 points. Okay, good job. Whatever. You are in the 2% of the field that has Robert Woods. Same team, price point pivot from 6K to 5.7, and you are only moving up and down in the standings with two people. Robert Woods scores 12 points. Was he that much better of a pick than Cooper Kupp? No, not really. Okay, you save $300, you score 2 more points. Nothing Slate winning. But you know what it does for you in the standings? Those 15 people that moved in the standings by 10 points, all right, you are now above those 15 people by 2 points in your total score. Robert Woods has 2 more points. And how many people did you move above those 15 with? Just one other. Just one other. One other person had Robert Woods who scored 2 more points than Cooper Kupp. So you and that other person are now 2 points above 15 of the 100 lineups. That means 15 lineups are playing catch up and the other 8 positions remaining in their lineup. Now imagine you do that across multiple positions. Again, Amari Cooper switching to Adam Thielen. You know, a 15% owned guy for another 2% owned guy. What happens if Thielen outscores him by 3? All of a sudden you are, 3 points ahead of another 15% of the field. And again, you're only there with 2 other lineups or 3 other lineups. And you do that up and down of your lineups, my friends. You do that up and down in your lineups, and you have an opportunity to just separate yourself from the field. Now, extrapolate those numbers over the course of, 10,000 lineups or 100,000 lineups that you are playing against in some of these massive tournaments. What the heck? It's like little edges you're looking for when you're building your lineups. Honestly, I don't want you to get stuck thinking that every single pivot you make and every single, low owned play is someone that needs to go just absolutely bonkers. So find those little pivots across each of these positions. It's fairly flat ownership throughout many of the positions this week. In fact, it's a little bit flatter this week than it was in week 1, which allows us to get a little creative, to be honest. So you don't have too many options where you're sitting there concerned about like a 28% owned player. Like last week, our projected ownerships on running backs, we had 4 guys, I think 28% to like 33. It was all the top owned guys. This week, they're a lot lower. So you have a lot of opportunity this week to build your lineups and focus more so on putting them together with, just like small little pivots and just build out the best lineups that you can. Now, what I'm going to do now, because it's important to me, is to show you guys some of the Fancy Cruncher updates because this stuff's pretty cool. And then we're going to move on to building actual lineups and looking at the Vegas odds stuff using Sparry. So what I'm going to do is I'm over here on our projections page. You guys can grab the NFL DFS projections. You simply just click the download button. It should go right to your own download file. I'm going to go ahead and zoom up the screen so you guys can see everything. All right, so I've downloaded it. I go over here. I click upload data, click upload file. I've got my download section, my DK projections. Now you click this skip all button. You can click skip and skip if these are the only 2 things that you want to bring in to Fancy Cruncher. Now, if you wanted to bring in all these different files or spots of our projection, you could do that. Like if you want to have our ownership, our values, our tournament metrics, all this stuff, you can add all this. But for the simplicity of this stream, I'm just going to add the name and the projection. You click upload projection. A couple guys that were like Monday Night Football, some things, Sunday Night, Monday Night Football, spelling I don't care about. All right. So now I've got all my projections in there, nice and easy. You'll see some new categories, projected fantasy points. If I click these, we're going to get to these projected passing stats, rushing stats. You can look at like their stat averages, things like that. There's all these different things that you can use. But first off, I just kind of want to look at what the projections are showing us real quick. So when you have your projections in here, all right, the first thing I want to do is create my player pool for the quarterback position. Now, when you go through this and you're starting to create your player pools, one of the things I like to do is simply look at the ownership versus the projection. When you have guys who are going to be in the double digits ownerships, I want their projection to be at the top. Two guys stand out to me this week who have, solid ownerships. They're definitely top 6 or 7 projected my projection points, but they're also like super high ownership, right? And let's look at them real quick. There's 2 of them. They're popping right off the screen real quick. We got Justin Herbert here at quarterback as one of them were double-digit ownership, and you see the FC Pro ownership has them at 11%, and you got Dak at 14%. We don't have them as high. We have Dak Prescott at 9.6% projected ownership, but neither of them, neither in the Fancy Crutcher projections or in ours, end up being the highest projected quarterback. So you have 2 guys who are going to be 2 of the higher owned quarterbacks on the slate in this game, who are also not projected to be the highest owned players. My friends, that is an opportunity, in my opinion, to probably cap their ownership, probably to maybe even totally remove them if you're making like a single entry lineup, or to leverage them. So how can we leverage a situation like that? Pretty simple in my mind. If you're talking cash games, you can go ahead and use Prescott. You can use Herbert, one of those guys if you want. The wide receivers are going to be similar ownership. They're all going to be a little bit higher owned. Here's Amari Cooper, 20%. CeeDee Lamb, 20%. Like these guys, where's Keenan Allen? 20% ownership, right? So you've got, these guys are fine cash options. It's pretty evident that this is a game that everyone's going to want to target and they're going to want to play. But if you want to leverage this, where you're looking at a spot where a lot of people are going to be playing, going back to those little pivots, right? Naji Harris, we had projected for 20%, Chris Carson, 17%, a little different than what these are. But Zeke Elliott right here, we have projected for a little bit lower, I believe. Let me go to the running backs. All right, Zeke Elliott, we actually have projected for 7.6% ownership, a rating of 69.67. So that's pretty darn good. So if you are creating a lineup where you are trying to get off the chalk and then you want to leverage the chalk, well, this week, I know no one wants to do it, but here's your chalk. 2 guys uncomfortable to do so. 2 guys that are going to throw the football a lot, but you're hoping for inefficient play. Dak is extremely hard to get off of, in my opinion. But if you're going to leverage all of that ownership, you're off of Dak, you're off of Herbert, you're not using Keenan Allen, you're not using Amari Cooper, you're not using CeeDee Lamb, you're not using Mike Williams. You're using, Ezekiel Elliott as one of these running back selections. It's 6.2K. That's crazy price tag. And you're leveraging that passing game. And then you're not using those players. That is like leverage 101. Where's the chalk? And then you ask yourself, what happens if the chalk busts? And then you do that. Is it the defenses that come out and play shutdown football? If they do, well, then the defenses are the leverage play. I don't think either defense necessarily is a leverage play this week. But there are other players in these lineups that could do very well, which takes the ceiling off of guys like Dak, takes the ceiling off Amari and CeeDee if they're not catching a couple touchdowns. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. So there's 2 options, all right? You got one there, and then the other one would be to use Austin Eckler in the same game, another guy, all right? And we go back to our study hub, you look at the running backs, we have them projected for 9% ownership. So you have all these passing options who are extremely highly owned. We're talking like 20% or higher for 3 different wide receivers. You could go Eckler and Elliott in the same lineup and totally leverage the passing game. If everyone under the sun is going to be using the passing offenses there, we're talking, if we're honestly using these projections here, 25% of all lineups in large field tournaments will be using stacks from this game. 25% of the field. 1 out of every 4 lineups created this weekend is going to be from this game. And you think you can use that game and win a tournament? That just does not work like that. I'm sorry, especially these large tournaments. Listen, we talking like a small field entry? Okay. Less than 100 people? Okay. Sure. But also, why? Just why? Look at all the other phenomenal options. There are so many really good options this week. I don't understand why anybody's absorbing 25% chalk. These stacks are going to be chalky. They're going to be chalky. Mari, Cedi, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. Some variation of 2 to 3 of those guys. Maybe even some people are running out 4. And then Dak and Justin Herbert absorbing 25% of all created lineups this weekend. There you go, CG. Again, circling back around the other direction, right? Running backs that are owned 25%, or Naji Harris, 20% ownership. Use the Pittsburgh passing game. Chris Carson, 17% ownership. Well, look at freaking Mr. Unlimited. 7.3% owned. Yeah? Okay. What's our ownership on Mr. Unlimited? 6.6%. Very similar. So you can grab Mr. Unlimited here, who, by the way, healthy through the first 9 weeks. A guy who always starts hot, finishes cold. Literally look back at every single... Look at the first half of 2019. Look at the first half of 2020. 2018. I mean, this is Russell Wilson. I mean, every single year. Except for what? 2016? Okay, whatever. And what else do you have in that situation? You get fantasy-focused goodness. You have 2 guys who garner so much of the market share every week. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. A similar situation. So Dak's going to throw the ball a ton to 2 guys, Cedi and Amari. Herbert is going to throw the ball a ton to 2 guys, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. So is Russell Wilson. And guess what? The Seattle Seahawks have a higher implied team total than Dak Prescott's, than the Dak Cowboys, or the Justin Herbert-led Chargers. We're talking leverage today, my friends. I just want to get people's juices flowing. If you are creating lineups today, find ways off the chalk and move to other players who are phenomenal stacking options. Phenomenal stacking options. And we're also, knocking out we're checking off multiple boxes at one time. And let me play this out for you. You are leveraging 25% of the stacks in the one game, where 25% of the field is going to be stacking Herbert and Dak Prescott. So what do? You fade the passing game and use the running game. 17% of the field is using Chris Carson today at 6.1K. So what do? You use the passing game. You got Mr. Unlimited here, totally under-owned. Or Ryan Tannehill, if you don't want to pay up for Wilson. Ryan Tannehill is going to be fine this year. The guy's been a top 10 scoring quarterback 2 years in a row, had 35 touchdown passes last year. In a bad game, Tannehill scored 17. You want to use Tannehill, go ahead. Save yourself some salary. I don't care. See, I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't think the best way to handle super chalky games is to fade them. I think the best way to win a tournament is to leverage them. You want to fade a game that doesn't matter. Cincinnati and Chicago. I don't think there's a single player on either side of the ball, either sideline, that is over 9% ownership today. Not a single player. You want to fade a game like that doesn't matter. Cincinnati, Chicago. Go ahead and remove them outright. Who cares? Who cares? And I'm not putting you on the spot, Joel Santana. I just like having those comments because it gives me an opportunity to bring up some different talking points here. But when you've got a higher owned spot, man, you got to try to leverage that. You just have to try to leverage that. Like, I am now focusing a lot of what I do today on fading, on leveraging the high-owned spots. I want to leverage those high-owned spots. I want to find a way to take advantage of it. So here we go. We are leveraging 25% of the field that is using freaking Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert stacks. 25% of the entire field. So what do? We're leveraging with a 6% owned running back. And then now we have a game where, Tennessee implied for 24. Seattle implied for 30. 54 total points. Seattle could not stop the pass last year. It's been a couple of years since they have. So you roll out Ryan Tannehill. You roll out touchdown equity in Metcalf or Lockett. You got A.J. Brown. I think we have him at, 9% ownership? Or Julio Jones is like 5% ownership. And you got a large game stack here, which is going to be probably a sub 5% owned stack. But this is probably single-digit ownership we're talking, right? It doesn't matter who you choose. Like, I am happy as a clam right now with the start of this lineup. I've leveraged the 25% of the lineups that are stacking the passing game at the Chargers game. I am leveraging against 17% of the field that's using Chris Carson by using the passing game. Right there. 2 birds with 1 stone. 2 birds with 1 stone. I mess up all these sayings. I've leveraged the passing game here, and I've leveraged the running game here. And I've built myself. And by the way, the start of this lineup, does anybody look at this? You're like, terrible. Ugh, terrible picks. Terrible plays. Awful. No upside. Everybody should be able to see these guys with tournament winning upside. I love it. As soon as I bring up Cincinnati, I was wondering about chat. You guys are the best. Listen, that was just an example. I'm on Cincinnati and Chicago too. I actually love Allen Robinson today, single-digit ownership. I love David Montgomery today, single-digit ownership. I like Joe Mixon, a guy who just had 33 carries, 33 touches last week. Sub 12% ownership. Yeah, I like those guys. I'm not off that game. My point was just, listen, if you're fading a game, don't fade a high-owned spot. That is like the worst thing to do. Don't fade high-owned spots. Leverage them. You have to leverage high ownership. That's like the way to win these things. You just do it. Steph Curry, 38% owned in a tournament. Klay Thompson, 6% owned. Don't just fade the Warriors. You leverage the higher ownership, and you're using Klay Thompson in that game. James Harden, 56% ownership because, somebody's out or something, whatever. KD's out. We'll find don't just like, I'm fading Brooklyn. No, you can't fade Brooklyn. James Harden's going to play 40 minutes and take 30 shots. This is just 95% probability of this happening. But you're going to leverage the fact that maybe he has an off night shooting and goes 7 for 28. All right. So what happens if that happens? Okay. Well, maybe, I can't even think off the top of my head. I'm just not there in NBA. Who the heck's on? Who's the third on Brooklyn? I can't even remember. I can't remember the other guy. Then you use the other player. You use the lower end players. All right. And you're just hoping one of those guys has just a great game. And that's how you do that in NFL as well. If it's a high owned spot, you leverage that spot. You don't fade it. You take advantage of it. What's up, Logan? Super impressive stuff here. Taking advantage of a big game with different options. Genius. It took me forever to get there too. It took me forever, years. I mean, I've been playing since 2013, right? So you're still playing good players. You ain't pivoting to turds. No. You don't pivot to turds. Like, this is probably a top 3 or 4 start to a single entry for a lineup today. Honestly, a top 3 or 4 start in this on the entire slate as a stack like this. Bounce back spot for Tannehill, bounce back spot for Julio, Metcalf, super low ownership, Zeke leveraging the running game or the passing game in here where 25% of the lineups are being built in the air. And there we go. I'm starting a lineup like that. So if you guys circling back in a long time, was it Kyrie? I can't remember. So if you guys circle back, yeah, it was Kyrie because he got hurt. That's right. That's right. Good point. If you guys focus on where the ownerships are, where the highest owned spots are going to be projection wise, and then just try to leverage these things, you're going to be in a really good spot. You're going to be in a really good spot. It doesn't mean you have to fade Naji Harris, but maybe you're just targeting a little bit more of the passing game today there, right? It doesn't mean you have to fade Chris Carson, but maybe you're just targeting Seattle and Tennessee passing games, and you're getting off Chris Carson. Or maybe you're using Derrick Henry. The heck, another fine option. Bounce back spot. Guy who had, really let down a large portion of the field. 22% of lineups, I think, last week had Derrick Henry involved. Listen, he has bad games. Or he gets scripted out sometimes. Look at what he follows them up with sometimes, though. Shoot, 30-point games. Goodness gracious. You're getting a guy with that type of upside at 6% ownership today? But, again, yeah, I know there's all these 50-point games at 4 o'clock, but they're not all owned, higher owned in the same way. Like, here's another one. This Kyler Murray, Arizona, Minnesota game. Like, leverage the high ownership of that Chargers game and then use the Arizona game. Okay, here's another one. Kirk freaking Cousins, man. 1% projected ownership here, FC Pro. Our ownership on Kirk Cousins, let's see this. It's got to be low. Captain Kirk, 1.7%. My goodness. And let's look at the wide receivers. Oh, we're building some serious lineups today. I'm actually feeling great. Oh, my internet just crapped out, didn't it? This is what happens when I stream sometimes on YouTube. It's very weird. Let's look at some of these ownerships. At wide receiver. Justin Jefferson, 2.9%. Adam Thielen, 2.6%. What? Let me click that game specifically. We have a game total mirroring the Chargers game in total points, mirroring the implied team totals, actually, and look at the ownerships of all the players. I just don't understand why anybody would listen. Chargers and the Cowboys use them in cash games, use them in really small tournaments. That's fine. There are too many good options today to be sitting on the chalk. There's just too many good options today. And when you crunch out your lineups later, you're going to feel extremely uncomfortable because you're going to see it if you've done it right. And you're going to see the Cowboys super low owned in your exposures or not at all. And you're going to feel uncomfortable because it's the best plays. There's other great plays today. There's other really, really good plays today. They might not be as optimal or as safe, but they have similar upside, more upside. Single-digit ownership on guys who have 30-plus point upside. Single-digit stacks. Kirk Cousins. I mean, there's another one we can build out. Oh, my gosh. Kirk Cousins, 1%. I mean, why can't you start a lineup like this? Why can't you start a lineup like this? You'll have the salary. You can pay down at defense. There's so many like 2.5K and under. Tight end, there's like 6 guys who are 4.7K and under. I like this week. You plug 2 of those guys in, you'll save some salary. There's a couple cheaper 5K options at running back, 4.9, 4.6, Chase Edmonds, things like that. You can add in Chase Edmonds and say, you think this is going to be a shootout? Okay, well then Chase Edmonds, he's going to get some pass catches. Right? He's going to get some pass catches. He did it last week as well. Where is he? 4.9. But guess what? That's a nice pivot off. Oops. That's a nice pivot off of Kenyon Drake as well. He had 5 catches, 4 targets, 4 catches, 14 points. All right. You got a nice large 4-player game stack. Use cheap defense. Use a cheaper running back, cheaper tight end. You'll have like 4 to 5K left over. Is it Is it a volatile stack? Yes. But like, are you trying to play safely in these tournaments, or are you trying to win them? I'm entering big tournaments today. Like, I think so. I currently have 300 entries. I think I maxed out the $5, which was like 120,000 entries. Like, I am not going to use too much exposure, if any, on the Dallas Cowboys and Chargers in there. That's 25%. That's 29,000 lineups based on our projections. 29,000 out of the 118,000 lineups today will be centered around building stacks in the Chargers game. I don't want to do that. There are other really good spots. Seattle and Tennessee, I'm going to have exposure there. Minnesota and Arizona, I'm going to have exposure there. Osborne, yeah, sure. Yeah, you don't want to use both high-owned options. Here's one. Maybe you just go to Justin Jefferson this week, the more uncomfortable choice, whom, by the way, had a similar amount of targets. He just didn't score. He should have had a touchdown, I believe. Got called back. It was ruled just short of the goal line, right? Yeah, ruled just short of the goal line. Bummer, right? So anyways, he was a half inch away from scoring a touchdown here and having himself like an 18.5 point day. We saw Justin Jefferson go for 28 plus, I think 4 different times last year. And then you go down here and you use Osborne, which I really like what you just said, fam. That's a really fine idea. And it allows you to have a large game stack still, which you have more correlation involved. You're trying to climb to the top of the standings. And there you go. You fill out the rest of your lineups and shoot. I mean, salary is abundant to fill out this lineup. Don't think otherwise. Holy smokes. I mean, think of all the wide receiver options this week. And there's 6 or 7 of them between 3.5 to 4.5 who you're like, okay, this guy should be like $1,000 more expensive. And he's not. Plug those players in, be confident. And, you're trying to win a tournament. Fortune favors the bold. You cannot win a tournament, a 118,000 person tournament. Can you? Yes. What is the probability of doing so on a stack off of Justin Herbert or Dak Prescott? Quite low, in my opinion. That's 29,000% of the field, or 29,000 lineups in that 118,000 person tournament that is going to have exposure to those players and those players involved. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper. Like, yikes. Just ain't doing it for me. Shoot, I mean, you plug in Zeke, 4.6 left over. That's you've leveraged 29,000 lineups and you've used a probably sub 1% owned stack. We're building winners today, my friends. We're building winners. We are not going to be focusing on chalk. It just ain't happening. It just is not happening. And I mean, you can honestly upload projections, and you guys can do this, old school way. First off, we spent all week going over like different ways to build groups, using position stacks, putting this is all the stuff I had done, I think probably on Friday's stream, where I was just kind of tooling around in FC here. Listen, like, there are different ways to use all this stuff and build lineups, but you can listen. Are you an old school builder? Like, you're just like, listen, I want to harness the power of FC. I want to use the teamriseorfall projections, but I'm not looking to build out 100 lineups, 150 lineups, 300 lineups, 450, whatever, 1,000 lineups. I want one entry. Okay. Go old school style. Cousins, Jefferson, Osborne. You got Hopkins. All right, we'll plug in Chase Edmonds. And then we also wanted to, we don't even have to leverage that game if we don't want to, just for the example, but we can. And you want to make a single entry lineup? Boom, there you go. You use my projections. You're uploaded it in there. You've got the players you want locked in there. You crunch out a lineup, and you've got your single entry. All right? You make yourself your single entry. You can do this old school style. You just crunch and lock. It's crazy. And look, I wanted to show you what's going to happen if I unchecked Zeke. Look where the ownership went. 2 of the final 4 spots plugged in the 2 highest owned running backs on the day. Do we want to do that? I don't. I'm trying to get first place for 50K today in this tournament. I'm unchecking both, recalculate, and it's going to use different players. Damian Harris got plugged in there. We had Chase Edmonds locked. Okay. And then it looks like it plugged in 4 wide receivers. But like, this is the optimal route. This is what optimizers will do today. If you leave these guys in here when you're making your single lineup today, it is going to plug in the highest owned, it's probably going to plug in the most optimal route to victory, which is going to be the same optimal route that 90% of the optimizers, 90% of the projections out there are going to put you on. It's going to be Chris Carson and Naji Harris. So be different. You're trying to win. You're trying to win. Woke up late, went to Tim Hortons. Now time for donuts and coffee, and I turn on this gold. Great content as always. I appreciate y'all. I appreciate you. Hit that like button if you are watching right now. That stuff is super duper helpful in the morning. So if you could smash that like button, I'm supposed to have said that like, what, an hour ago? I'm just not good at marketing myself, my friends. So if you are watching right now, if you are watching for the first time, hit the sub button. We're here daily streams. I think 10, 12 videos per week. Please, by all means, help us out. Appreciate y'all. I do. I appreciate you. Tim Hortons, yes, right to Ellie Bourne's Canadian heart. So I used to live in upstate New York, and oh my gosh. So Timmy Ho's was the best. Honestly, they had, and I'm a huge donuts guy. DFSnDonuts, when I made the account handle or switched whatever my initial one was in like 2017, when I was like, you know what, I'm gonna start doing some DFS stuff. I love this stuff. It's super fun. I mean, goodness gracious, I was a huge donut fan. I mean, now I'm 37. I got 2 kids, so I'm watching the donuts intake these days. But Timmy Hortons honestly had the best donuts. And this, I promise you right now, this part of the stream is not brought to you by Tim Hortons. I wish it were. Hortons, if you're watching right now, we're looking for a donut sponsorship. But seriously, they had the best cream stuffed donuts. You know which ones I'm talking about. The ones that look like a Boston custard donut that has a custard in it, but theirs were stuffed with the white frosting, the white cream. Oh my goodness, I used to get that one all the time. Had a chocolate cover on it, had a white, frosting drizzle on top, 2 lines across the middle, and then just packed full of the cream. I used to go get like a half dozen of those when I was young and just go absolutely bonkers back when I was in upstate New York. Tim Hortons was the freaking best. It honestly was the best. It was the best. No doubt. DVA, are you kidding me? Yeah, I'm happy to help you. I'm happy to help with all this stuff. I love this stuff. Canadians start the calls with Timmy Ho's. Yeah, I know. That's where I picked it up, man. I was in upstate New York, so there were a bunch of people who used to call it Timmy Ho's. It's not like I made that up. No way. Kirk Cousins going off. It's likely he will have more than one receiver going off. I agree, Fro. That's the play. It's Osborne. I'm not totally on him, but if we're doing large tournament builds, yeah, why not? Plug him in. A large iced coffee and Timbits kind of day. Okay. Us Canadians calling in with Timmy Ho's. Boston creams, man. They're good, but I'll take the Timmy Hortons Boston cream over the Boston custard all day. Will you cover some super draft? Yeah, we'll do it all. It's a 3-hour show. I'm by myself, so I'm pacing a little bit this morning. If you don't bring Timmy Ho's to a meeting, I ain't coming. That's funny. Dang, you guys are the best. Holy smokes. I should have checked YouTube before I even said it. 80-something people watching, 50 likes already. You guys are, holy smokes. I don't even need to say it anymore. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Give me a second, homies. You sent out another. I literally had someone DM me asking me if I'm on Twitch today or I'm on YouTube. I've been on YouTube since the end of July. I had to send out the alert again. It's so bizarre to me. People are still looking for me on Twitch. No, I'm on YouTube only today. YouTube only. All right, let's do some SC stuff. Y'all ready? Let's have some fun here. I know you've been waiting for it. Let's do it together. Let's do it together. At 10:30, we have Matt Schaaf coming in. Talk some DFS, talk some fantasy. At 11, I'm going to switch over and do some Monkey Knife Fight picks and sports betting. And if you're like, well, what is this? Where are you using? I'm just going to use the Sparry model. This was updated twice last night, again this morning, I believe, 9:37 or something like that. So what we do, if you're like, well, what is all this? Okay. What we do is we look at the Vegas consensus. We have like 4 or 5 sports books that we're pulling. We average out what the Vegas odds for are. And then our 10,000 simulation model pumps out what we have the game resulting in based on the 10,000 sims. And you can look at it that way. So, like, here's how you would read it. The Bengals, based on the Vegas consensus odds of the 4 or 5 books, I can't remember how many we have, has the Bengals as plus 118 underdogs. After our 10,000 simulations of this game, based on our models, we have the Bengals winning 53% of the time, minus 113 should be their odds. Gives you a nice 15% edge over the line. So the play here would be on the Bengals outright, to win outright. And, you read it like this. So like total edges. So if you're looking at totals, here's another nice one. The Vikings and Cardinals, which, by the way, my friends, what did I just talk about? I talked about the Cousins stacks. Binking a tournament today. Well, check it out. All right. The total, based on our 4 or 5 books, consensus odds, has them at 50.5. The Sparry model has them at 58.5. So the play is to the over. And by the way, that is a grade of an A. Why does that matter to me? Last week in week 1, grade A bets went 4-1. Grade B bets went 4-1. 8-2 overall on the day in week 1. A phenomenal way to start. C's went, I think, 3-2 or 4-3, something like that. It was like +1. But had you done the A bets last week at 1 unit each, it came out to like plus 7.7 units or something like that. It's pretty nice. 8-2. Not a bad way to start out, going A's and B's. And so we'll talk about this a little bit. We're going to do this at 11 o'clock. We're going to look at the spreads, money lines, totals. We're going to do one more update. And then we added this week. If you have not seen, by the way, this is pretty dope. If you've not seen, we added player props. So if you love player props, which I do, I think they're super freaking fun. You guys can plug in the consensus, or you can sort by consensus and then see what our Sparry model has. So like Aaron Jones, consensus rushing yards, Monday Night Football, 68.5 based on the 4 books. Sparry model has him at 61. And honestly, you're just looking for the biggest differences here. Austin Eckler, here's one. Consensus has him at 55. Well, Sparry has him at 73 rushing yards today. It's a 32% edge over the Vegas books. All right, you can simply just sort right here by this stuff. This is the rushing yards differentials. Nice odds right here. So you take the over on James Robinson rushing yards, 39. Okay, so we'll come back. We'll do this at 11 o'clock, and we'll do the Monkey Knife Fight stuff. The prop edge is everything. Yeah, I mean, that was a lot of fun last week. Had a good time. Let's look at the stats. This is really, really cool. So we're going to go to advanced options, click on the projections. This is brand spanking new, my friends. Oh, by the way, sorry, I probably should have said this. So if you're like, well, hold on. Slow down, Mitch. I want to try out the Sparry stuff. Okay, here you go. There's the link. Just dropped it in chat for you, okay? It's right there in the YouTube chat. Go for it. We'll do that again at 11 o'clock, I promise you. Uno momento, por favor. Got to send out a link to my guest here he's coming in 15 minutes. All right, so let's look at these stats and how you can adjust these. These are pretty freaking cool. Dave updated this later yesterday afternoon, and I just wasn't on PC and didn't have an opportunity to show everybody how to use this. It's pretty cool. So let's go over it today. Now, there's an interesting, I honestly think the best way to use this is going to be to like leverage situations. Okay, let me show you. Tell you what, doing these solo shows on Sunday morning, where I'm talking like rapid fire and covering so many different topics, I'm thirsty. I keep hiding my mic or my camera so I could take a drink. I'm just being honest. Solo show. Listen, I've been doing solo shows. I'm gonna just say this. I've been doing solo shows for 2.5 years, 2.5 years. I went on this path in 2019. Here we are. It's been actually just a little over 2 years and a couple months. So had over 1 million hours watched, 1.34 million hours watched on Twitch over those 2 years. Switched to YouTube 6 weeks ago. Haven't looked back. I've had a blast over here. YouTube is exploding. Thanks to all of you for hitting the like button, dropping comments after videos, following, sharing with friends, subscribing, things like that. Super helpful. These Sunday morning shows, I feel immense pressure still, even though this is my 3rd year doing it. I'm not even kidding. I'm into year 3 doing it. These Sunday morning shows are super stressful, and doing them by myself stresses me out. So I got to pause, remove my face from the screen, and just blow this up here and take a drink and a couple deep breaths here. Looking at this, so here's how cool this is. Like, let's say you're looking at this game and you want to look at specifically the Cleveland Browns, and actually let's use this. Here's one. We have the Vikings and the Cardinals at 51 points, right? This is what the Fan Scruncher has them at right now. And like, let's say for whatever reason, like let's say, what do we have, Matt? All right, we have Cardinals at 30, Vikings at 28. Check this out. I'm going to show you something. I'm about to change. I'll leave it like that. I'm about to change the projected score to 30, and here's what you're about to see. These statistics, including the projection that you're creating, will change based on what I do with the projected score. So will the offensive plays, the pass attempts, the rushing attempts, as will all of these stats, their targets, receptions, yards, touchdowns, and their projection. Again, so FC's got their own projection model, and then they've got their stat projections, and what would this come out to? All right. So like you can look at the FC projection model as a median. Same thing with our model as a median projection. And then you could do like weighted. So like, let's say I'm using Sparry and they have Arizona for 30. Watch this. Everything just changed. All their projections changed. You saw Kyler Murray's projection go from 21. Watch this. I'll put it back down to 27, 21.49 up to a 23.53. You go over here. Well, Kirk Cousins to 18.4 points. Well, check this out. Sparry model has him at 28 points for the Vikings. He went up a full point, 19.65. Some of these pass targets look much better all of a sudden. KJ Osborne got a nice increase to 11 points. Justin Jefferson, massive 25-point projection, 22 points for Thielen. These guys both have a 30% market share. Dalvin Cook's projected points went way up. And now when you go back here and you're looking at your positions, if you crunch now using the my projected fantasy points, your results are going to be a little bit different because the projected fantasy points that you've created are changed now. And you have Dalvin Cook at 26. And in fact, if I sort by that at the running back position, now he has the second highest owned or second highest projected player. He was not that initially. He was down to like a 22 or whatever it was, 23 points. No, excuse me, a 1.52 differential. And same thing with the wide receivers. Look at this differential change. So if I sort by the differential, what I did to their projections, they changed by this much. So you have an opportunity when you are doing these stat projections to change the games how you see fit. What if, by the way, I think what's really cool about this, what if we get news and how neat is this going to be during NBA? Steph Curry ruled out with 6 minutes before lock. Everyone's scrambling. Well, you go here and you just simply change one thing, all right? You remove maybe the usage rate and the minutes. Maybe you remove the minutes for Steph Curry. You give Klay Thompson, an extra 3 minutes. His usage rate, you bump up by 6%. And I don't even know who's still there. Cook or something. One of those guys, one of those backups is point guard, backup point guard. I don't know who's there anymore. You bump his minutes up to like 33, you bump his usage up to like 16%, and then everything shifts, adapts, and then you quickly crunch out by your stat projections. Like, this is such a cool thing, and I love it. I love it for NBA. I think for NFL, you can use it for game theory, where you're envisioning certain scenarios. All right. So maybe Minnesota here, you like this, but you don't think, you maybe matchup wise, Justin Jefferson just ain't it. So you put his his market share down to 22%. Well, look what happened. When I moved his market share down to 22%, okay, and you can reset everything right here, so don't worry. If I move his market share down to 22%, what it did is it boosted everybody else's. Well, what happens if Justin Jefferson's just getting locked down this game? Well, look, everyone else picks up the slack. That means Adam Thielen all of a sudden is getting all the targets. KJ Osborne's going to get peppered at with 23% market share. What if Justin Jefferson gets locked into this game? All right. And he gets a 37% market share. Well, then everybody else gets decreased. Everybody else gets decreased. And who is one guy we've talked about ad nauseum today as a situation where you could see this happening? It was the Rams and who was it? Cooper Kupp game, right? It's Cooper Kupp. Where are they? Here they are. All right. So maybe you say Cooper Kupp, not the guy this week. Maybe Robert Woods is the guy that, Matt Stafford is focusing on. So you bump him up to 34% market share, and all of a sudden you got Robert Woods going absolutely bonkers. Maybe you just bump him up to 30%. All right. It moves everything around and increases projections. So you have a really, really unique way to modify things to how you might see this game being played out on your own. And you can have some fun doing so. All right. So everything changes when you do all this. Be mindful of the way this changes everything. And we'll go through that ad nauseum through the rest of the week. I promise you that. Now, real quick, what I wanted to do before my guest comes in, I thought this would be fun. We didn't do this in the first week, but I want to do this with you now because it's going to be a good time. Here's the Monkey Knife Fight link. If you use promo code Donuts equals a 100% deposit match plus free month of sparring. So I told you that, right? I already told you that's how you're going to get yourself I already showed you the beauty of being on the Sparry Edge. Well, fam, when you are using Sparry, we actually have this really cool thing, Monkey Knife Fight. We're just going to do this for about 9 minutes here as we lead up to our guests who start rolling into the stream. So the guests are coming, and I figured we'd do this for a few minutes, okay? So we've got the Sparry model, and the coolest part here, this is freaking awesome, is we actually pull all of the Monkey Knife Fight contests into Sparry, and we simply go through and we have our Sparry projections matched up against them so that you can see and you can play their contest how you see fit. So while the Sparry model has Aaron Rodgers at 244 points, or excuse me, 244 passing yards, the Monkey Knife Fight contest has him at 295. So when you come across a Monkey Knife Fight contest at 295 yards, you take less because we have them way under. And by the way, if you want to sort by games, because I know a lot of people like to go, like, let's say you wanted to go in here and you wanted to play the Lions and Packers game, you can simply just sort by the Packers by going to search, typing in Packers. I typed in Pack, and look at this. It brought up all the Packers. So I've got Aaron Rodgers at 295. And again, it pulled it right from this game. And you would take less because the Monkey Knife Fight model has him at 244 and so on and so forth. So what I think is kind of fun here is if you go ahead and you just go through here, and I want you to identify what are the best spots. What are like the best looking lines, and you can find different ways to approach these slates. Now they have some really big ones too. Like you can enter some of these big ones where you go all the way to the right, and they got these massive contests. They're super fun. So let's just do one real quick. You've got all these lines right here, every single one of them. And you got to hit, 10 out of 10 to 500 times your buy-in. All right, that's a lot. Yeah, it's a 10-pick parlay, but we're here to have some fun. This is for pure entertainment only. We got 6 minutes to kill while we're waiting for our guests to come in. Again, promo code Donuts over there on Monkey Knife Fight. So you go to the props model. All right. And you could just start researching their names by search. Naji Harris. All right. We have him at 66 rushing yards, so less. Where did I see that? Right here. Here's the rushing yards. There it is. And by the way, what I'm showing you right now is exactly what you could do if you're somebody who does player props on sports books. Fam, we have player props up now. You could go to the props edges and go do the same thing. One thing I actually really like doing is you go look at this. By the way, the Vegas consensus odds for Aaron Rodgers, consensus props, is 277. Monkey Knife Fight has Aaron Rodgers at 295. Our model has under both of those. That's a serious edge. Okay? Like you can use these in conjunction with this and really, really take advantage of Monkey Knife Fight. There are a few members in there that play a lot of Monkey Knife Fight, and I see them winning some big, big parlays here because they're just using the props edge and the Monkey Knife Fight model together, and you can take advantage. Joe Burrow, 269 yards. All right, let's type in Burrow. We have him for 292 this game, so I'm taking more. Baker Mayfield, 269. Let's type in Baker Mayfield. They have him at 269. We have him at 300. Team that's going to score 30 points. All right. Darren Waller, 79.5. Let's type him in. We have him at 77.7. That's a very close line. We'll go less. Damian Harris, 75. Getting a free pick right now. Yeah, me too, man. It's a lot of fun. Damian Harris, we have for 102 against the Jets. So more. Take more. By the way, let's see what he is by Vegas consensus. Damian Harris, consensus has 73 yards, so we're way over, way over. Next, Big Ben, 275 passing yards. Let me spell his name. Ben Roethlisberger, 275. Oh, no, that's a tough one. That's a pick'em, a 275. I'm taking less because I think he's absolutely I think he's so washed, it's not even funny. Oh, Allie, no problem. I'll drop it in chat. I'll show you guys, actually. It's pretty cool. So the way I did this, yeah, I have people ask me all the time. That's fine. I set it up in a way where, like, listen, I hate logging into everything. I hate it. You don't need to log in on the website, on the mysperry.com website. You actually just go to Patreon, and then every week I post a password in an article, like a post. It's just a post. All right, so I don't care. You guys can see this. There it is. And every week, log into Patreon, okay? And once you log into Patreon, you just look at the link that says, like, I think it says, like, Sparry password, 910 to 917. I just didn't change it for these couple days. And that's the password. And then you just go here. And then when you click this page, all you do is enter the password. It'll say, like, what's the password to get this authorized content or something like that. All right, let's keep going. Let's finish this one out. Nick Chubb, 94.5 rushing yards. We have him at 87.8. And by the way, that correlation works out to me because if we think that Baker Mayfield's going for 300 passing yards here, then yeah, I don't think Nick Chubb's going bonkers. Stephon Diggs, 85 yards, 85.5. All right, has him at 98. Josh Allen, 295. I'm assuming that's going to be more. Yep, we got him at 308. Again, correlation. Okay, it works out just fine. This is because the Sparring model is, it's 10,000 simulations come out to these stats. Last but not least, let's do Stafford. 257, way less. And there you go. You choose $2, $5. If this 10-pick parlay hits, that $5 10-pick parlay, $2,500, just like that. It's a lot of fun. You guys can enjoy playing this. Promo code Donuts, DONUTS. You get yourself 100% deposit match on Monkey Knife Fight. Again, I think the biggest glaring takeaway I want you to have is not just the fact that we have a Monkey Knife Final model. It's the fact that we pull the consensus player props. Because, friends, you could legitimately, and I'm telling you this now is just like a little trick, you could look at the player props consensus and just use that as the projection against what Monkey Knife Fight has. I don't care if you don't use the Monkey Knife Fight model. You can do that. What I just told you, which I think is pretty tight, 77 rushing yards is the contest projection for Monkey Knife Fight. Well, guess what? Our Vegas consensus shows 68 yards. That you could take less just based on that. And then use this as like the cherry on top. 61 that we haven't projected for. Okay? So it's very easy to do all this stuff using the Sparry projections and honestly take advantage of all these player props the best that you can. See some of these questions before my guest hops on. Is having a 4-man stack from the Chargers game too much of one game for cash? Absolutely. Absolutely. You want less correlation in cash, my friends. Listen, I think if you're going to use guys from that game, you can use people that are opposite sides. So maybe you want to roll out Dak Prescott. Like if you want to go Dak in cash, and then at wide receiver, you plug in target monster Keenan Allen. That's okay. You could do something like that. But once you start stacking things together, now let me plug in CeeDee Lamb, the cheaper option. And by the way, first off, if you're in a bunch of head-to-heads, I think this is fine. This is totally acceptable if you do this for head-to-heads. If you have Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb in there, they're not relying on each other. If CeeDee doesn't have a great game, does Dak explode the way you want him to at 6.8K? I don't know. Their correlation is their value is tied together. If Dak doesn't have a good game, does CeeDee have a good game? I'm not too sure. All right, cool. My alarm's going off. Hey, what's up, Matt?
How's it going, Mitch? Was the alarm for me?
Yeah, it was, buddy. 10:30. I needed to make sure I brought my guest on. Appreciate
that's right.
You
I set off alarm bells every time I enter.
Yeah, that's right. Well, listen, dude, while you're here, as I know you are more of a cash game player from last time we spoke, and this is kind of your wheelhouse, and I'm the opposite. So I'm kind of going to give you the floor here to some extent. And at quarterback this week for DraftKings, and this is very similar, set up for how I do for your Friday night stream with you and Jared over there at draftsharks.com. So why don't you go ahead and tell me, when we're looking at the quarterback position on DraftKings this week, who stands out to you as, one of those safer floor options, maybe still has some kind of ceiling involved when you're looking at your cash? Because I know a lot of people who play cash in 2021 are doing it right, and they're entering a high volume of head-to-heads where the ceiling still matters. So when you keep that in mind, who kind of pops off the page for you to be a cash option on DraftKings at the quarterback position?
Well, a lot of times I settle on a guy that doesn't cost as much, and he's my main go-to quarterback there. But this week, it's really a pool of guys. It's in the $6,500 to $6,900 range. Dak Prescott, Tom Brady, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert. I like all those guys. I think there's really a low chance that any of them is going to fail you. I mean, obviously somebody's going to outscore the others, and any of them has the potential to dramatically outscore the rest of them. But I think all those guys are going to top 20 points for us and be just fine for cash games. And I think that they all come with attractive stacking options too.
So let's say you are entering like double ups, okay? And you just have to be 45% of the field. Does one of those quarterbacks kind of stand out to you more so than the other?
I think I probably have to go either Justin Herbert or Dak Prescott primarily, just because the matchup is terrific for both. I mean, Justin Herbert's matchup is even better now that the Cowboys are all banged up on defense. They're down, both defensive ends are down a starting safety. The linebackers are getting reshuffled because of the defensive ends that are missing. So I think when you look at Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen, it's tough to get away from that as the easiest stack to like that's not going to let you down and has the huge PPR upside. But I think either side of Cowboys Chargers is a good way to start with there.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I think honestly, where the ownership is, we're already talking about ownership projections of 14, 11% on those guys, 25% of all tournaments are going to have them included. Well, then my friends, for cash games, those two are going to be even higher owned. Those are your chalk cash options today. It's someone in that game. It's Prescott or Herbert. And I think honestly, wherever you go there, I don't think you necessarily can go wrong until after the fact. There's no way that Matt or I can sit here totally and say, nope, that's the one. You got to use this guy if you're going to win this week. That's going to be a Monday morning quarterback play. Honestly, you can look at that game, high implied totals. Both teams are going to throw the ball a ton, and you can roll out Dak or Justin Herbert and probably be in a fine place. How about tournaments, though, Matt? If we're talking like a very large field tournament, we're trying to take one down. First place type pick. We're not just trying to make 3-4 times ROI. We're talking, I want to win $1 million. Who's that play?
Yeah, and I mean, first, I tend to lean away from chalk in all formats, but I think in this case, if you lean away from the chalk on those quarterbacks, then you run the risk of missing out on a 35, 40-point day that a bunch of other people in that double-up field get. For tournament, though, that's where I'm willing to lean in another direction. I would rather not play those higher owned quarterbacks. Tom Brady, I think, has the ceiling this week to throw 5 touchdowns if things really go his way against the Falcons. Jalen Hurts, of course, we know the ceiling for him, and he's coming in at mid to low single-digit ownership from the projections I've seen so far. So I really like Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith as a tournament stack so far. I like Tom Brady and Mike Evans as a tournament stack because all of those guys are about to come in at lower ownership this week than what they really should be for both what they have shown us in the past and the ultimate ceiling that they present in their matchups today.
You brought up one guy I actually wanted to talk about later, and let's just dive into it right now before we even get to the position. Mike Evans, right? He's kind of been one of those people that everyone's talking about this week. What put you on him? And is he somebody you're more interested in cash games, or is he somebody who you can see yourself using in both cash and tournaments this week?
I mean, I can see it both ways. I'm definitely much more interested for tournaments because the way week one went for Mike Evans, I don't think he's going to do that every week, but there's definitely the chance any given week that does happen because that was my concern for Mike Evans for season-long fantasy coming into the year is him, Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, even Gronk, as we saw in week one. There are so many guys that any of them can go light on targets. And Mike Evans didn't do well in target share last year compared with his fantasy production. So I think there was room for him to come down a bit from what he did last year. That said, and we're talking a 1-week game, we know that Mike Evans also has the opposite end potential. He can hit that supreme ceiling that wins things for us. He can go well over 100 yards. He can score twice. And I think especially coming off a game where everybody's like, oh, what happened to Mike Evans? The Bucs scored all these points and kept moving the ball, and Mike Evans was nowhere. Maybe this week his quarterback's like, we're going to remind everybody who Mike Evans is. I'm going to try to find you a couple extra times. Now, I don't think that's a strategy to bet on in general, but if you're building these single lineups, it's like, well, if that happens, then, I mean, these two could shoot the moon together.
Yeah, and I like what you just said, actually, because that's something we have seen Brady do in the past, right? Like he will feed somebody who he thinks might need to be fed, be reminded they're important to him, to the offense. That's a Brady thing. That's why people love playing with that guy. He looks at these guys and he takes care of them on the field and will literally make sure that they get the ball a few extra times. We've seen it for years, seen it for the past decade. And, one really interesting point that stood out on Friday night when we did our other podcast together was that we highlighted the fact that Antonio Brown was only on the field for 65% of the snaps. Now, while he was out there, he did run a route on a on the majority of those 65% of his snaps. So when he's on the field, he's going to be running some pass routes. Mike Evans was out there for over 90% of the snaps. We know Mike Evans has incredible touchdown equity. I totally understand the play. I like it a lot. And I think that a guy like that who is super volatile is probably better used, included only when you are stacking in that game. I'm not a big fan of super volatile options like Mike Evans for a one-off. I'd rather take somebody and maybe has a little bit higher probability of hitting their potential in a one-off, but that still does not mean they don't have their place. And you had already mentioned that Tom Brady was one of your favorite tournament options this week, and I love the play. I find it so interesting right now that Tom Brady is a sub 10% ownership. In fact, he's coming in at under 6%, I believe, right now. And you have a guy whose team just went absolutely off last week, scored, I think, 30 points, 32 points, whatever it was. And my goodness, he threw 50 passes. And he's a shoe-in weekly if they can't get that running game going for 303. I mean, honestly, that could be an average stat line this year if they can't run the football, if they don't trust Ronald Jones to hold on to it, if they're leaning on Fournette and Gio, who barely got a carry out of the backfield, does not even seem like he's the pass-catching option as much as they talked about. Leonard Fournette ended up with 7 targets that game, did not come off the field in the final 20 minutes of that game. So, Tom Brady could throw the football a ton today. And they have a massive implied, I think, 32 point total this week. That I think is the highest on the entire main slate. So I love your call. I think it's a phenomenal one. No one's really talking about it. They're only really talking about Mike Evans. So that's a really nice way to pair a volatile option with a guy with massive upside like Tom Brady. Now, sliding over to the running back position, there are a ton of running backs this week who are above 8K, whose ownerships are about half of what they were last week. Last time we were together talking about these players in particular, their ownership projections, both on your site, on our site, were 28, 30% owned. Now it's week 2, and all of a sudden, every single one of them is between 8 and 16%. What happened? Are you going to be on these high-end players this week, or are you, going to be eating some of the value at the mid-6 and 7K price range this week, Matt?
When I've been building so far, I've been focusing more on the lower priced guys, that mid-range that we know are getting touches and that allow me to pay up for guys at wide receiver and quarterback. But I mean, if the higher priced guys are going to go lower owned than we expected, I'll certainly look their way a little bit more. I think that I always hesitate to say that there's a risk to Christian McCaffrey because we know what he's capable of anytime. And last year, even in just the 3 games he played, he was top 6 in all 3 of them, and one of them came against that Bucs defense that we tend to avoid with running backs. So it's a negative matchup for Christian McCaffrey, but I wouldn't say I'm worried about him. As I was saying, all those guys, if they're coming in at lower ownership, I think they get more interesting. But I do have to admit that my primary focus has been in that 6K, 7K range with guys that are getting similar workloads and just give me a little bit more salary flexibility.
So in that price range, do any of them stand out more so for you for your cash build versus tournaments and vice versa? I'm intrigued to see if you are in that 6 to 7K range, who is it that's kind of standing out for you?
I do really like Chris Carson for cash. He's going to go a little higher owned than some of the other guys in that range, but I don't care about that for cash, and I'll take the chance that he gets the ball. And no matter how efficient the Seattle passing offense is, they always like to keep the ground game involved, and especially if they have success today, as it seems like they should, the way that Tennessee played last week. We'll see if they rebound, but it seems like we should get a good bit out of Chris Carson. And then kind of in the similar range, I don't know what to make of Zeke in terms of cash. I can definitely talk myself into him making sense because he's going to get more touches than he got last week, almost certainly, unless the game just jumps out against them. At the same time, I'm a little bit worried because maybe they don't go so much more to the run game and maybe they stay pass heavy and maybe the Chargers do jump on him. So I guess Zeke is in between. I like him better on the tournament side. And I also love that he's coming in at single digit ownership on that side because he can have a rough day and still score twice just with how good that offense is. Jonathan Taylor has been more of a favorite, I would say, for those GPP lineups because he's coming in at single digits as well. We already got the usage last week that we were worried that the issue with Jonathan Taylor was he wouldn't get the kind of usage that he did just get in week 1. Now, maybe that's going to disappear. Maybe it was a 1-week blip, but he's also in a good spot for it to happen at least one more time. We've got Michael Pittman, Paris Campbell are expected to play, but they're going to be at least somewhere short of 100%. So maybe that helps shift targets toward the running backs. Like I said, we got the Jonathan Taylor targets last week. We got the carries. He didn't do anything big with the carries, so he didn't put up big numbers. So people aren't on him. He's not all that expensive, 7,200 on DraftKings. I think there's big upside if he does get the ball, and he's facing a Rams defense that let David Montgomery run pretty well in week 1.
Yeah, I was going to say, my goodness, if you like what David Montgomery did in week 1, watch what Jonathan Taylor does in week 2. The 7 targets out of the backfield last night, super encouraging. I mean, everybody, I think, thought, myself included, honestly, that Nyheim Hines would just gobble up everything, right? And I like that you brought up the hobbled wide receiver core, because that will play into where the offense will kind of, invest their production, their play calling, whatever you want to call it. And I think that is going to be I think Nyheim Hines is actually in play even more so this week than last because of that. Might be that short yardage type guy where they're just dumping up, giving the short passes just as they would do like a run, like some of these offenses like to do. And Frank Reich loves the short, quick passing game. Nyheim Hines fits right in. So in that same vein of having like a lower owned tournament option, I think Nyheim Hines is a fine option in the same game. Love the Jonathan Taylor call, not one I have made today. I was on Zeke in tournament, so I love that. I think the funniest part is, too, and I was thinking about it while you brought this up, Matt. You said Zeke is one of those guys you're actually thinking about in cash. If we had the Thursday night game on Sunday on the main slate last week, at the price point we had Zeke at, I think it was like 6.8K, whatever it was, Zeke would have been somebody who people would have been mentioning as a cash game option. And now we are 1 week removed. He's facing a defense that is not as good against the running game. Because, by the way, everyone was talking about how great he looked. He was in great shape, bounce back spot. Now the offense is going to be better. Zeke's going to get red zone carries. Zeke gets dump offs. Zeke's going to get a lot of work, right? He's in great shape, whatever. And so everybody liked him last week, and he would have been a cash option in week 1. Now in week 2, now everyone's looking at him as only a tournament option and a game where they could potentially be going up and down the field in a bit of a high-scoring affair. Well, then I like what you're saying, because Zeke should be a fine option in that vein, right? If you're looking at it from that perspective. The only issue for me is just the fact that there's so many other really good options for cash. I'm a little bit more cautious, I would say, especially when we're looking at cash and saying, there's other options like Naji Harris running 100% of the snaps. But listen, Zeke had almost just as many touches last week. I think, three less touches overall, even though, Naji played 100% of the snaps. But Zeke played 84% of the snaps in week 1. He ran a route on 78% of the pass routes. He blocks well, but they still put him out there and they said, you're going to be the safety valve for this offense. And now they don't have Michael Gallup. There's one less person to, open up space down the field. So maybe he gets a few more dump offs today. I love Zeke Elliott in all formats today, but I am leaning towards tournaments. Appreciate your insight there. I really like the Jonathan Taylor talk. That could be a nice moneymaker there, Matt. Wide receiver, let's slide over, my friend. So DraftKings, very affordable. Okay, that's one theme I found when I was looking at the wide receiver position today. I thought after week 1 there would be a bit tighter pricing, but it didn't really happen. What they did is they moved everyone up maybe a few $100s or so. The value down in the 3K range isn't as obvious this week, but it doesn't mean they're not there. When you're looking at cash options at wide receiver, who stands out for you? And then also, if you're playing tournaments today on DraftKings, what are those value options that you're looking to use?
I mean, I think CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper both kind of stand out when I'm building cash. And I'm not going to play both of them, but I can use either of them. CeeDee Lamb's cheaper at 6,400, and I'm less worried about how many people are playing them. I think both of those guys are going to get plenty of targets, so I don't think you even need to pick a favorite between them. And it's going to be a high-scoring matchup. I'll be shocked if this game does not produce a lot of points and disappoints, on a broad scale, because I think there should be plenty of offense there. And both of them come in cheaper than Keenan Allen, despite, I don't know, probably being in the same range in terms of target share. Maybe not target share. Maybe Keenan Allen gets a larger share, but in terms of target volume, I think the volume should be there for all those guys. So definitely I'm playing somebody from that game. And I mean, Mike Williams is even in play, but he's maybe not quite as strong a target floor bet as Lamb, Cooper, and Keenan Allen. But I mean, that switching over to the tournament side, that also kind of having all of those guys available is what makes it even easier for me to play a quarterback that's not involved in that one, because I can still get some of the juice by playing any of those wideouts, maybe Jared Cook as a cheaper tight end. I know we haven't gotten to that position yet, but I think pieces from that game and maybe the Arizona game without playing the high-priced quarterback, the higher-owned quarterback, is a good way to get exposure to all of those things.
If you need a wide receiver that's maybe a little bit lower price to make some of this work and fit, especially if you look at, guys like CMC and you're paying up there for cash, there's going to need to be some value somewhere. Are there any value options at wide receiver that you're saying, you know what, I think this person might be cash viable this week. I'm going to give them a look. And if not, who are those tournament options you are liking down in the lower price range? Because there seems like there's a few on both ends of the spectrum here.
I know you talked about Cedric Wilson earlier this week. We had him atop our DK dollars per point projections on DraftSharks.com as well at $3,100. I mean, I think he's obviously in play for GPP. I think he's also in play for cash because, I mean, if Michael Gallup were heading into this week at $3,100, we'd be like, play Michael Gallup in all formats. And I think Wilson is at least similar in what we can expect him to get. Certainly not as good a bet as Gallup, or else he would be starting over Gallup. But I think he's a solid bet for targets, at 3,100, even if he gives us, 3 catches for whatever the yardage is. That's not killing us. Even a 0 is not killing us, especially on the cash side at 3,100. So I like Cedric Wilson across formats. And I do think that he's a solid player in general, saw a lot of time in the slot. So he might be somebody that finds even more room to operate this week. The Chargers are also going to be without their slot corner, Chris Harris Jr. So the matchup gets even better individually for Cedric Wilson. Maybe he gets even a lot more work than people are anticipating. Another one in that 3K range, only if I have a Kyler Murray lineup, though. AJ Green on the GPP side at $3,700. Nobody's going to play AJ Green because everybody thinks he looks like the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt. I know for anybody who's old enough to remember what that even is. AJ Green is decrepit as far as anyone who watches football says, but the Cardinals say that guy right there is our number 2 receiver. He was number 2 in targets last week. He was number 2 at the position in routes. He got 2 red zone targets. He got 1 end zone target. So, I mean, anything that AJ Green gives me at $3,700, on a 6-7 target day, I'll take it. And I think that there's a chance he gives me a touchdown, the chance he catches 5 passes.
Yeah, what's kind of crazy, too, is I was looking at the snap rates. Rondale Moore only had 29% of the snaps in week 1. 29%. AJ Green tripled that. So, well, a little bit less than triple. But, he's on the field for 70% of the snaps in week 1. Outsnapped Christian Kirk, who had a little bit better equity in his targets, I would guess. Here's some other plays. And I want to bring these up because some of these guys are interesting to me. Braylon Edwards looked pretty good. Looked pretty good in his first week. 5 targets, 4 for 81, 3.7K. KJ Hamler, 3.8K. Potentially number 2 this week for this team. I mean, number 3 if you're looking at, Noah Fant, or you think Tim Patrick's going to be running over him. And then there's 3 others. Terrace Marshall, 3.3K. Everyone loved him. And all of a sudden we're a week later and no one wants to touch him. The guy still had 6 targets last week. It's not like he didn't have an opportunity. Did he do great in his debut? No. But he's a rookie. It's his second game. Would anybody be shocked if he goes out there today and catches a touchdown like he looked like he could score 1 billion of them in the preseason? I would not at 3-3. KJ Osborne, another guy. Listen, staying in this game, which you just mentioned, AJ Green, I love it, Matt. I love it. He's 3.3K. And listen, if this game's going to be a shootout or a high-scoring affair, KJ, somebody's got to get some pass targets. And it looked like he filled that 3rd pass target role last week for the Vikings. So when you look at these other 3.3K options, I know there's so many good ones today that are priced up, in the 5 and 6K range. And you talked about a handful of them in the 6K range. There's so many wonderful options. Do you see any need to go down to the Osbornes, the Marshalls, the AJ Greens, the Hamlers, or were you just humoring me at the beginning of this segment?
I mean, need is a strong word, but it certainly can give you the flexibility to get up to those lower owned, higher priced running backs that we were talking about earlier. If you want to, instead of playing Zeke Elliott, get up to somebody like Alvin Kamara or Dalvin Cook, then that lets you get up there. So I think when you're building, it certainly helps to have that as a possibility. And obviously, depending on how many different lineups you're putting in, I think you would want to mix in some that have a guy like that in that range. Bryan Edwards, I'm very curious to see what happens with him because he was silent through almost all of that Monday night game to open the season. Then all of a sudden he was peppered in the late stages of that game. Maybe he gets more involved this week and we stop calling him Braylon by accident.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it could. That's what I'm always looking for too. It's like no one's going to feel comfortable, right? It's like the production came at the end of the game. Everyone's going to think it's a fluke. But listen, the reports out of camp all preseason were incredible for this kid. And I don't know. I'm not down there, but listen, if we're talking like milli makers and stuff, these guys got to be all in play. They're all in play. Everyone's always to some extent in play, but these guys all have some, some equity built into them just being on the field for a large majority of the snaps. And you could say the same for a lot of the guys in the 4K range, and they don't even get more targets. So for me, it's like, listen, I'm either paying up for the top of the pricing scale at the wide receiver position, kind of skipping over the chalkier 6K range. I'm trying to get like the DeAndre Hopkins, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson. These guys are all sub 11% ownership. Stephon Diggs, even Ridley, Lockett, Thielen. Every single one of those guys, I think we had for under 9% ownership, other than DeAndre Hopkins at 11%. So it's like, I want to use that price tier while everyone else is doing the 6K range. And to do that, I guess maybe I'll probably have to live down there with the Terrace Marshalls of the world, sprinkle in some of these other players. I think that this week, last week I said tight end's the position I think you win or lose. This week I think it's wide receiver because of the way everyone's priced. Let's slide over to tight end. I think there's a lot less options this week, a little bit more clarity about how some of these guys are going to be used. Go ahead. You could just run down like who are your favorite cash options, who are your favorite tournament options at the tight end position.
My favorite options across formats for DraftKings this week are Noah Fant at 4,200 and Jared Cook at 3,900. Noah Fant led the Broncos in targets last week. Maybe that wouldn't have been the case if Jerry Jeudy had stayed healthy all game, but it is the case. And now we have no Jerry Jeudy. So Noah Fant is at the very least going to be in that mix. I mean, I thought as soon as Teddy Bridgewater won the job that Noah Fant probably benefited the most just because he's not the deep target that Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton have been at times, where he's the middle of the field target that should look appetizing to Teddy Bridgewater in just about every dropback. So we saw that happen in week one. I think it's going to be a theme. So I like Noah Fant in general, and especially before his price gets too high. Jared Cook, we got the targets last week from him. It was a high pass volume game against Washington, but if we're expecting a shootout today, he's another low-priced and lower-owned option. I haven't checked his ownership projection this morning to see if it's jumped, but it was in single digits as of yesterday. So I don't think that he's going to climb too far, and especially at 3,900 on DK, he gives me some of those savings where maybe I don't need to go down to the 3K range at wide receiver, but maybe I do, and it allows me to fit the higher-priced wideouts alongside the stacks that I'm building around. Tyler Higbee's in that range too, and I don't dislike him, but his matchup is tougher than either Noah Fant against the Jaguars or Jared Cook against the Cowboys, and he's coming in at likely higher ownership after a bigger week one. So I'm really focused on Noah Fant and Jared Cook.
Yeah, and you brought one up on Friday night that Darius Leonard back this week. Always scares me, man. That guy's just so freaking good. So I liked Higbee before I heard that news. Not totally there anymore. And if a lot of people are on Fant this week as well, like I'm looking to try to get off of both those guys. I like Cook at 3.9. I think that provides you a little leverage if you stay in that game, because a lot of people are going to be using that game, right? They're going to be interested in using Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert and Dak Prescott and all these players. You can leverage that by using the lower owned Jared Cook and stay within that game for the stacks. All right, let's slide over defense last position. Who are you looking at in cash? Who do you like in tournaments, my friend?
Well, let me say real quick, too, before we get too far from tight end, Kyle Pitts' ownership projection has come down this morning as far as what I've seen. So he's a bit more in play for me now than he was back when I did my notes for our Friday night show. On defense, my favorite on DraftKings so far is the Eagles at 2,400, and they're priced much closer to everybody else on FanDuel, so it's less of a focus there, but it's not just price for the Eagles. They performed against the Falcons last week, I think, better than really anybody could have projected. We knew that there was upside to it, and they absolutely lived up to the upside against the Falcons. The 49ers are coming off a big week. They scored 41 points, 34 of those offensive. There was a pick six involved as well, but it's still Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, he did turn the ball over in that game against Detroit. We've seen that he has implosion potential. I mean, like 3 interception games in him. We've seen that come from Jimmy Garoppolo, which is really one of the main reasons that so many people expected Trey Lance to just take over right away. He hasn't. It's still Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think there's that upside for turnovers against the Eagles this week. We saw the pass rush work out against the Falcons. I think that's going to make life tougher for Jimmy G. If you have money to spend later on, you can go up to other teams. There are plenty of other options. Cleveland's going to be attractive at any price this week. Pittsburgh's attractive against the Raiders, but my primary focus when I'm building is the Eagles to give me that the salary cap plus the upside.
Yeah, I love the Eagles this week. We talked about that the other night. Anytime you get Jimmy G potentially having to throw the football a lot is a good scenario for the defense. Matt, maybe you know this one, and I missed out. Some of these guys in chat are starting to bring up some players. Hunter Henry is someone I brought up on Friday night, and I said it all is dependent on Jonnu Smith. I don't know if we have Jonnu Smith news this morning. I've been streaming since 9 a.m. If you caught it, maybe you can let us know. If not, how would you handle that situation today with the Patriots? If Jonnu is in, are you playing either Jonnu or Hunter Henry? And if he's out, what are you doing with Hunter Henry? And does he enter cash game consideration?
I mean, I guess Hunter Henry enters cash game consideration if Jonnu Smith is out. I haven't seen anything on him so far this morning, so I don't know if they've given an update. We all know the Patriots. We usually can't trust anything until we actually see it. So we'll see what the inactives say on that one. But, I mean, he's more interesting without Jonnu Smith around. I still can't say I would get excited because no matter which of them or whether it's both of them available, that ball is going to get spread around. It was spread around last week to Nelson Agholor, Jacoby Myers, James White. I mean, for me, there's nobody in that offense that's got such a ceiling that it pushes me past the I'm apprehensive about the whole situation feeling.
That's good. That's good analysis. And I think, someone like him, I don't know what kind of ceiling he has either for a tournament, especially when he's priced around some of these other guys who I think have incredible ceilings, and I'd rather just go get. And even if Jonnu is out, maybe cash viable just because he'll be out there for, 90% plus of the snaps, puts him in cash game consideration, and he probably would garner, 5-6 targets or so. Don't think he has the upside everyone thinks he has, or at least that he used to have. I think we have kind of seen him fall off a little bit as an athlete after all of these injuries too. And that's been kind of echoed over the last year and a half. So his name value is someone that I think people will immediately say, whoa, Jonnu's out. Let me get some of that, because we saw it all through the best ball season. Everyone's talking about Hunter Henry this, Jonnu Smith that, great, mid to late tight end picks in best ball. Yeah, to an extent, Jonnu, I think I never was there with Hunter Henry. So for me, I echo a very similar sentiment that I just don't know if the ceiling is there. Cash game potentially, but I'd rather go up and get Darren Waller, Kyle Pitts. These guys are probably better cash options. And I think your first tight end you talked about, Noah Fant, maybe the best for both tournaments and cash today.
Yeah, and just because we're talking about those tight ends, I think what made them attractive was that they were going so late. So we were really buying floor in an offense where we didn't know for sure where the targets were going and where we hoped Mac Jones would step in and increase the passing volume. It was never like this guy's going to win you your best ball league. It was like you can wait this long and still get somebody that's okay.
Well, let's not talk about floors for this last part. Let's just talk about ceiling only. Matt, if you had one player that you're saying, this is my guy today, I think he's going to score just so many points that his value is off the charts, and he's going to be the guy you needed to have the Nuts lineup on DraftKings to win a tournament. Who's that guy for you today? Go ahead, let everybody know who it is, why, and then let them know where they can find you, and you have a good day, my friend.
Yeah, you too, man. Picking one guy is so difficult. I really am gravitating to the Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith stack, though, because of the scoring potential, plus the salaries, plus the ownership for them. So I can't say if you don't have Jalen Hurts, you're going to miss out, but I can say that that's the duo that excites me. But on DraftKings and on FanDuel, it's been tough not to build around them. Jonathan Taylor, I want to throw out there. I guess I'm not sure enough to say that he's my one guy, but I think by the end of the day, it could be like, oh, man, I wish I would play a Jonathan Taylor today.
Sounds good, my friend. I appreciate you today. You guys can follow Matt on Twitter at SchaffDS. You can see his little avatar label underneath his face. Go ahead, make sure you follow him on Twitter. He's a good dude, good company over there at Draft Sharks. And you can catch their Friday night stream on YouTube and everywhere podcasts are available. I join them on Friday nights for the DFS podcast as well. They do DraftKings and FanDuel. And Matt, we'll see you next week, my friend. I hope you enjoy your week 2 and you have some good fortune, my dude.
Mitch, thanks very much for having me, and good luck to all you guys with your lineups this week.
Appreciate it, buddy. All right, everybody, let's freaking, yeah, me too, Rich says, I like Matt's input. Yeah, he's very sharp. I mean, fancy pros like top 10 ranker, him and Jared, top 10 ranker, they're very sharp people. So they know football in and out of football. Well, my value of these types of shows is always going to be, leveraging construction for building to the contest you're entering, not just what you like. It's more so like, well, hey, this stack is a great stack, but only within this type of tournament. So anyways, hey, let's do a little Q&A time, my friends. So these types of questions, let's be kind of specific about what sites we're looking at. Let's talk about, where you're thinking about using them, stacks, what site, things like that. Fire off all your questions you might have. I know I probably ignored a bunch of them, might be, but we'll just start dropping them right there in chat. I'll kind of go down the list here. I want to make sure everybody feels solid going into week 2 here. And I will show you a plethora of things. If you need to look at some of these stacks and you want to see, where are some of the best stacks today, which by the way, I talked about it earlier. I said, I'm kind of off the Dak Prescott's and Justin Herbert stacks. And I said, I want to be on the Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray stacks. I want to be on the Ryan Tannehill stacks and the Kirk Cousins stacks. Well, when you look at our top 10 stacks and you look at our stacking list for 3-player stacks for the main slate, the Dak Prescott stack, this one right here, is the first Dallas one to show up. The Justin Herbert one is the first Dallas one to show up. Tom Brady in there as well. A bunch of quarterbacks in there instead of the highest owned guys. Again, 11% projected ownership on Justin Herbert, 20% ownership on Keenan Allen, a 11% ownership projection for Mike Williams. We have, I think, 21% for Amari Cooper, 20% for CeeDee Lamb, 14.8% for Dak Prescott. These are high-owned players today. You're trying to take down a tournament. That's not where you're stacking. All sorts of other teams with massive implied totals. Game totals over 50 points in Arizona and Vikings. Another one between Tampa and Atlanta. There are other spots today, Seattle and Tennessee over 50 as well. Other spots today where there's going to be a lot of points scored where you do not need to use the chalkier option. So let's try to build very smart lineups today and leverage some of those ownerships. All right, Damian Harris, let's freaking do this. Wow, no one's asking a question. Have we covered that much and that well today where you're like, I don't have any questions? I know y'all got questions, because my Discord is insane. I mean, we have, I took part in 3,800 something messages over the last 2 weeks in Discord. So you guys have so many, maybe you're asking them there. If you have Q&A, don't be asking them in Discord right now. Ask them on air. I'll help you out. And then you guys go hang out in Discord afterwards. There we go. Oh, I like that one. I'll get to that, Christian. Okay, so Damian Harris at 5 point, I want to say he's 5.8. Let me sort these real quick. Damian Harris is, holy smokes. Damian Harris, 5.4K on DraftKings. Man, he is not catching any passes, but this team has implied to score 24.5 points on the road against the Jets. The Jets cannot stop anything for a few years on defense. Definitely a team that funnels most of the production through the air. Damian Harris, not a guy I'm using in cash on either FanDuel or DraftKings. If you're going to use him in cash, 6.2K is semi-interesting on FanDuel, but definitely not somebody I'm looking for in cash. I think Chris Carson's the cash play. Najee Harris is the cash play, or you're paying up for guys like Joe Mixon. With the touch equity, you're paying up for, CMC, these types of guys. Tournament, love Damian Harris, though. I think he could be a guy who gets 20 touches today. If they don't touch Ramondre Stevenson again, if they're worried about fumbles, I think that Damian Harris, a fine tournament option. There we go. Here they come. Oh, I forgot. I think YouTube's delayed by a minute or so for the questions. Favorite low-owned running back on Superdraft. Ownerships on Superdraft is always extremely difficult, my friends. Very difficult ownership projections. That's why you don't see many companies doing the ownership projections at all. What I will do for you, though, is I'll slide over to the running backs and I will sort out their projection and you can simply just look at this, and we can look at some of the projections. Guy like Joe Mixon here, a 1.4 multiplier. If the crowd's going to be on Naji and Chris Carson, you get Joe Mixon, the same exact multiplier. I actually think it's higher floor and higher ceiling than both of these guys. So if Mixon's slightly lower owned, go him. Darrell Henderson, another one, 1.55 multiplier, 20.51 point projection. Eli Mitchell, I think no one is comfortable with this week. Eli Mitchell on Superdraft, a fine option at 175. Listen, we're talking tournaments, right? Low owned. Eli Mitchell has not been mentioned once in over 2 hours of a stream this morning so far. He was a hot button topic for all things fantasy, not really DFS this week. I think people are concerned about Hasty, concerned about Trey Sermon popping off this week, getting his opportunity. This kid had 19 carries for 105 yards and a touchdown last week. He's going to get some carries this week. 1.75 multiplier does not need to erupt for him to have a very good game here. We're talking 12 points can return you 20 right here with that multiplier. What dog am I putting 500 on today? Fam, I love that you asked this. I want to say specifically, listen, this stuff is pure entertainment value. I am not saying put $500 on anybody. I would never. I can't do it. All my money gets thrown into DFS. The Sparry model last year had the Steelers winning outright over the Buffalo Bills. Phenomenal pick. Here's another dog today that the model likes. The Bengals, minus 113. Looks like the Vegas odds. By the way, when we started the stream, if you remember, the Bengals were at plus 118. The consensus odds, this looks like it must have been updated recently, has the Bengals now at plus 104. So really going towards a pick 'em here soon. But we have the Bengals at minus 113. Let's see. Is there any underdog here that we have projected to win? Here's one. Cowboys, plus 138. We have at minus 133 on the road. So maybe that's one for you if you're feeling funky. But goodness gracious, not for 500. We're talking for a McChicken sandwich with your friends. All right. I may have missed this. What is the difference between my projected fantasy points and my projection? So the my projection fantasy points is simply what you do here in the stats. So if you change this stuff around, your my projected fantasy points will be whatever you've changed. If you want to crunch by whatever you've been doing for the past however many years of using FC, you just simply crunch by use my projections. So use my projections. This is the same old way you always do it. This is what you've uploaded. If you grabbed our projections on the site and you upload them in the FC, the my projections category is that. Do I like Jameis Winston at all? Oh, yeah. I mean, he's somebody I mentioned in my Donuts playbook. I think he's in play. The only issue for me is just there's so many phenomenal options today. Do you need to grab Jameis Winston at 6.1K? He just doesn't do it for me. You got Kirk Cousins, a guy who, let me say this. I'll say it one time here. Don't ever forget it. Don't you ever forget it, okay? Top 30 all-time touchdown rate. The guy just throws touchdowns. When he's asked to throw the football out, he throws touchdowns. Or top 30 touchdown rate. Selling over 32 in the last 3 years. Kirk Cousins, Sparry model has him for 28 implied team total today for the Vikings. He's 6.2K. What I like more is if you're going to pay 6-1 for a quarterback, who the heck are you stacking in this game? All right. You don't have any clear-cut options to take advantage of. Kirk Cousins, fam, I mean, you go here. Both of these wide receivers are sub 5% ownership. You got Osborne down here, sub 5% ownership. I mean, you pick two of these three, you got yourself a much better stack at a very similar price point in that game. So, or for the main slate. So that's where I am. Chris Carson, yeah, I mean, there's nothing bad with him. Team implied total of 30 points. I think he's a better cash option. Don't think he's really the tournament play for you. Our projections have Chris Carson at a 17% projected ownership. Better cash play. Tournaments, I'm looking to pivot. Wow, chat is going so fast now that I can't keep up. Let me see if I can grab a couple. Nope. Guys like that just don't make my list. Winston, Callaway, Kamara with more. Again, this circles back to Jameis Winston. It's like, listen, we're talking Millie Maker. Sure, go ahead. New Orleans. Top projected stack for New Orleans. Let me give you this filter. Two different people are interested in Winston. I think it's worth showing you guys now, okay? So Callaway, DJ Moore is the top 3 projected stack. That is projected total of 42.23 points, an ownership total of 10.9%. The top 4-player stack, let me give you this one. 4-player game stack is Winston, Callaway, Deontay Harris, and DJ Moore. Second one is Winston, Callaway, Adam Troutman. Total ownership is the same, just about 11.4, 11.5. Projected total, very similar. So hopefully that's helpful, my friend. Getting a lot of Bears defense today. I like them, actually. They're affordable. The Bears defense is affordable. It's not like they're super expensive. We saw Joe Burrow have a decent game in week 1, but this is still a guy who thinks going to be a little gun shy. I think this offensive line might not be as improved as we all think. And the Bears defense has been stingy for the last couple of years. And the Chicago Bears defense, 2.8K in DraftKings, not really on them on FanDuel at 4.1K. Opposing implied team total for the Bengals of 21.5. Listen, they don't really have the spread I'm looking for. I like to pick my defenses based on spread more often than not. Like, I prefer the Patriots today on FanDuel at 5K. Like, I'll pay up the money to get them against the Jets. Zach Wilson did not look good, and they have a nice 6-point spread. That's almost a touchdown. So guys like teams like that, I'm much more interested in using. Saints -3 smells like a trap of a game. Let me look at the, I don't know why I closed it out. Let me look at the sparring model real quick. The 2.5 hours of being a solo stream is catching up to me right now. Feeling fatigued. Model goes the other direction. Models has Saints as heavy favorites. Is that a graded bet? A C. C's went, I think, 4-3 last week. A's and B's went 8-2. For what it's worth. Is this a week to go off building off ratings or lean towards projected points? It's up to you, my friend. That's a you decision, Steven. Projected for the projections, it's going to be a median projection. It's more long-term looking, or excuse me, more short-term looking in the ratings without getting too much into like what encompasses these ratings for the players. It's a longer view. So I think at the beginning of the year, the ratings they're very useful because we don't have much 2021 data, and the 2021 data is factored a little bit heavier in the projections. So you'll sometimes see guys who have a very high rating here who don't have the best projection because long-term they might be a better play. Make sense? And a lot of that's baked into like, what is their price tag? So I don't want to give too much away. Daniel Sharp says, I'm not getting enough Baker on FC on FanDuel. When I lock him in, I'm getting an error message. Do I possibly have wrong settings? Well, part of that, Daniel, is when you're in FC, you need to make sure that your rules that you have set up or your groups that you have set up match what you have in your player pool. So if you're asking for, let's say you ask for a 2-player stack from Cleveland in this game, but you don't have 2 players selected from the pass targets at wide receiver tight end, like maybe you only have Jarvis Landry's picked, it ain't going to work for you. So your rules have to match your player pools. And then also in your advanced options, sometimes simply messing around with what you have team salaries and what you have for the global caps, your positional caps, things like that will help you out a lot more. Lots of GP builds that get a spot between Mooney and Marquez Callaway 4,200. Who do you like the most? I don't like players. I just build off projections and ownerships. So I can answer you in that way. Liking a player is irrelevant to me. I think a lot of it comes down to just where's the ownership, what's the upside, what's the probability of hitting there. So they're both 4,200. Ownerships are identical. Projections are almost identical. And let's see. Ratings almost identical. Everything's almost identical. So that's just a pick. That's a pick 'em, bro. That's it. That's a toss-up. I don't like either of them more, Holly. I don't like either of them more than the other. Your call. Someone can come back on Monday and say, they like somebody more than the other, but that's Monday morning Monday morning quarterbacking, in my opinion. Neither quarterback is high owned. So no matter who you use, it's not like you're leveraging anything. You're not eating chalk. You're not leveraging running backs. Neither running back is super high owned today. Sub 15% ownership for McCaffrey and Kamara. So just go with where you want. Did I talk about Ridley? No, not too much. I mentioned him earlier. I said he could potentially be, one of those pay up guys. Every single one of these wide receivers in the 7K range, other than Keenan Allen, these guys are all single digit ownership except for DeAndre Hopkins, who's I think like 11%. So you're getting Diggs, Metcalf, Ridley, and Lockett all single digit ownership. They're all in play. I like them all. Here's the other two. Jefferson and Thielen, single digit, 2%, 2.6%. Absolutely, Pat. Absolutely. Check this out. Go to the stacks. Go to Buffalo. Look at some of these ownerships on their stacks. I think Josh Allen could win someone a massive tournament today. I love it. Are you freaking kidding me? Look at this. Look at their ownerships. Okay. You can stack up a 4-player stack in this game. Get the target equity to win a tournament on a 4-player stack that only takes up 30% of your salary. That's phenomenal. Oops. It's fine. Listen, we're on 2.5 hours of a solo stream, my friends. I'm tired. Tired. I need a drink. I feel like I'm losing my voice and I'm hungry. So listen, I know all the other streams out there right now promoting their promos and things like that for the last 2.5 hours. I did not do it one time. I saved it for the end of the stream. Let me share this with you now. So in chat, my friends, you go ahead and use the subscribe now page. All right. And you can take a peek at our site, what we have to offer. We have 4 professional DFS players, over a dozen live final seats, a bunch of 5- and 6-figure wins between us, tons of tools, all sorts of mobile upgrades. So everything looks really freaking good on mobile, like the cores and stuff like that. This stuff looks so good. Yahoo, Cash Games, all this stuff. It looks amazing on mobile now. So massive site upgrades. Player pools, articles, videos, cheat sheets. We have private lineup building streams, the Discord chat, all that stuff. And the crazy part is, it's less than $1 a day for the month. Every single month you're with us, you get $20 to use on Fantasy Cruncher, which I stream for like 10 hours a week, right? So you get all the insane support that you need, right? Holy smokes. Like, we got you covered. So if you want to use Fantasy Cruncher, you get $20 to use on FC monthly. This isn't just like, hey, sign up and we'll give you $20. No. You get $20 every single month. And on top of that, my friends, this is the last hour and 40 minutes for this deal. If you use promo code NFL50, if you use promo code NFL50, you can sign up for just $15 for your first month. Kick in at $29 after that, but it'll be $15 your first month. It's the last hour and 40 minutes for it. All right, listen, y'all got enough info today. This voice is about to tap out. I need some food. I need some coffee, and I got to go build 2,000-something lineups and win some tournaments. I will see you on the inside, my friends. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. I'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock for the lineup study and lineup rewind show. Hit that like button on your way out for me, please. If you enjoyed, 150 minutes of free information, hit the like button on the way out. Your boy's going to go rest up, build a couple thousand lineups, and I'll sweat things out with you later today. I've had this idea too for a while, and I'll tell you guys about it in chat. One of these streams in the afternoon where I'm going to be streaming like a sweat stream. Not going to be today after I just talked for 2.5 hours, but I'll be doing it another day, my friends, where I'll have like my lineup. Listen, I have, I think, $2,400 on DraftKings in play today. Like, I'll leave it up on the screen. You guys can watch it, win and lose money. I don't care. And I'll just leave it up on the screen. And I could cycle through like Superdraft, Yahoo, FanDuel. I don't care, whatever. And it'll be like the sweat stream, right? I'll have Red Zone up on my other monitor. I can't show Red Zone as like legal things, but I'll watch it. And I'll hang out. I'll talk to chat. We'll talk together. We'll sweat out the game. When we see people score, we'll freak out together. We'll get ticked off together. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I might make it like a private members-only thing just for a trial, and then we'll move it to YouTube if it goes well. We'll see how it goes. A lot of fun stuff in the future going on for the company, and thank you all for being here. I'll see you tomorrow, 1 o'clock, for the 1 o'clock lineup study stream on Fantasy Cruncher. Take care, my friends. Good luck today.